Hey, I'd like to start. Welcome, everyone. As always, it's a joy to see you, and not only to see you, but we've had two hikes so far where some of the people in the room have come. Obviously, some of you I know online have come to the Audubon events. So it is just a joy not only to go out in nature, especially when we have such beautiful weather, but to meet just people who have the same interests as you. And so that's one thing I encourage you that whether it be in some of these organizations I'm about to mention or others. There's lots of people who share your interests. If you get out and about, I'm sure you would love this. So this is part of Orange County Community College's cultural affairs, present a series on just kind of birds from A to Z. We were going to try to hit a lot of the major topics. Dorothy is the one who deserves all credit for all things here. Dorothy, are you with us? Sometimes she is. And it is a joy to see have Dorothy back. But then obviously as we go out, the fact that there are organizations in Orange County which are preserving habitat, offering presentations and education for anyone who wants to get involved. This allows us to see all of these things. So I'd like to give a shout out to two of them. The Orange County Audubon Society has five sanctuaries in the area that they maintain. And then they have a number of presentations and hikes. So if you ever had, questions, obviously you could go on their events page and search them there. I produce a monthly newsletter for the Audubon Society where we try to hear the pictures of the things we've seen at our sanctuaries in the past month. So, if that's of interest or someone who might be interested and can forward it on, that would be great. Just over the border in Sullivan County is the Bashakil, an incredible wetland there. And the BKAA, the Bashakil Area Association, is a wonderful organization, not only preserving the wildlife, and they do an Eagle Watch program in the spring where any visitors to the boat launch there can just get a scope on the eagles, and it's wonderful. We were just there for a hike on Saturday, yeah, Saturday, and just two bald eagle. I've given plenty of bird hikes where the birds do not cooperate, like they miss the memo. But here, like when you can start a hike by, oh, by the way, look over there in that tree, these two bald eagles in perfect view. So it was like the sandhill cranes, the previous one, just over there. So we've been having great luck with that. But anyway, there's organizations. If this is something you enjoy, you'd like to meet more people who go out birding. I'm sure they would love your company and just to form a nice community here. So where are we? Well, kind of exciting because if you were to say, show me the family tree of birds, a lot of the early branches are no longer with us because for the longest time, birds, well, they reminded us a little of dinosaurs. I mean, they still had teeth, they still had grasping clawed hands, they still had long reptilian tails. They could fly, but they weren't great at it. Just for, it took birds a while to get, their groove and to get, all of the adaptations which we see today. And if we were to put them in a family tree, I'll kind of show you two videos which kind of say the same thing. The most primitive branch alive today would give us things like ostriches, rheas, and there's a couple of birds that can fly in South America in this group. But they've got a primitive arrangement of the bones in their mouth that remind us of reptiles. So that's the first branch of the family tree. And then if you were to say, who's next? It would be, the ducks and the turkeys, believe it or not. So if you were to compare their genes, the family tree, they seem to be next. And then there's a bunch in the middle, lots of aquatic birds like herons and loons, the birds of prey, things like the woodpeckers and the hummingbirds we did before. So here's my simplistic tree. In the past couple of weeks, I kind of gave it a little more involved, but either way, we are now at the top. All right, so we have gotten to our final group of birds. So birds are classified in orders. So there's biological groupings. Birds are a class Aves, that then get split into orders. And there's the order Passeriformes, which we call the songbirds or perching birds. All right, that's where we are. And not only is that a great place to end up because, they're just beautiful, their songs are around us, their colors are around us, they represent most birds. So the last big group on the family tree, all right, as we look at it this way, is also then the most successful. More than 60% of modern birds are here, and they outnumber, amphibians and reptiles together. So just the songbirds. So really successful group here. And the next 3 weeks are going to be about them. Now, the one thing I'm not going to like really emphasize is all of the sub branchings within, because we're just going to kind of break it into 3 groups, and warblers are going to be our 3rd group. So we'll just get through as many as we can tonight. I kind of have an idea of where we'll probably end up. But if we go a little before or after, that's fine. Then next week, we hopefully finish the same and then get to warblers by our 3rd night. And that will then have been the survey of all of the birds, and then we'll hit other topics. We could say what among the songbirds, let's compare their genes. Who's most closely related to who? Like who's mostly related to the blue jays, crows, and ravens? Where the thrushes fit in. So there certainly is that. The order that I'll be presenting it in is close to a good family tree, but it's not exact. And then the minute I make a video on the exact, then there's a new study that comes out and that shuffles it a little bit. And so this is pretty good, but I'm not really trying to to say, this is perfect. All right, the songbirds. We've been waiting for a while, building up to the grand finale, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is. So this order of birds, who's in it? Well, there's a tiny little group up here in the brown in New Zealand. All right, but New Zealand wrens, we don't have to talk about those. And then there are 2 big suborders here. I'd like to talk about the tyrants first. Suborder Tyranni, the tyrant flycatchers. Most of these come from South America. We do have some here. In South America, some of them can be beautiful. I mean, actually, North America can get this one as well, the vermilion flycatcher. So like in Florida, you get that. So I'd like to start off with like brilliant colors, but unfortunately with the flycatchers, that's not where we're going. So I'm going to just show you some of the South American ones that kind of fill that. Yes. Yes. And I'll explain why they're called the tyrants. That's coming. So these are the flycatchers. There are lots of them. And if you go to South America, they're pretty. Oh, they got like all of these different colors. Some of them have like really long tails. This one only in the males. So that, the females are going to judge the males by how long their tail feathers are. And then there's a whole lot of other South American birds, which are kind of off and brown color. So depending on where you are in South America, you can have lots of brilliant colors. Where I lived in Paraguay for 2 years, lots of birds look like that, like a lot of them. So that is a suborder. So there's this suborder called the sub-Oscine passeriforms. They're singers, but not as good at singing. All right. And they, yeah. They're a little bit different from the ones that we are most familiar with here. So these are all songbirds, but this is the second suborder primarily. I'm going to start with the flycatchers in our group, and then all of these that are a little more colorful. They are smaller. Crows and ravens are the biggest members of this group, and their feet are better at perching. So we call them songbirds, but another word for them could be the perching birds. So flycatchers. We have a number in our area, not quite as exotic as some of these ones from South America, as you'll see. So here is the kingbird. And if anyone has earned them the name tyrant, it's this bird. There are lots of birds which try to protect a territory from potential predators, especially birds that might fly over a nest. But kingbirds are among the best. So if you ever look out and you say there's a big bald eagle, a big great blue heron, a big bird, but these little birds are harassing it, mobbing it, to the point where could the eagle take on a smaller bird? Sure, it could, but it would take a while. The little bird is going to be more agile in flight. And eventually the bald eagle or the heron or the hawk says, you know what, this just isn't worth my time. And it just flies away. So kingbirds are very good at that, and hence the name tyrant flycatchers. They're very good at just harassing everyone that they don't like who comes into their territory. So if you look at them, they'll be defending a territory, but they're flycatchers, so they're pretty easy to see. They're going to sit at the top of a tree in an open area where they can get like a good view of flying insects, and so they'll go after lots of different kinds, from dragonflies and damselflies to flies. But so kingbirds would be a good example of these. So just one more video of kingbirds, and somewhere here you'll see them. They actually have a red stripe on the top of their head, but it's really hard to see. All right, so I rarely see it. The feathers have to be just right. So here's one little video of, I think I have a bald eagle first, and then an osprey. But there's a bald eagle, but if you notice, little tiny black dots are just chasing it and harassing it until it leaves the area. The osprey will be the same thing. Those are the tyrant flycatchers saying, you have no business in this area, and very often just kind of ushers them out of the area. They'll go after, this is the osprey, they'll go after great blue herons as well. So interestingly, when they get to South America, when they overwinter, they don't act like that. So, as far as are they just violent and aggressive when they're defending their territory? Yes, but otherwise, no. One of the things that a lot of birds do, because red-winged blackbirds do this as well, is if a hawk were just to leisurely have permission to fly over a swamp, it would see where all the nests were and then be able to, it's very hard to find a red-winged blackbird nest if you're in a swamp because there are all these cattails, et cetera. But if you can fly over, it'd be a lot easier to find them. So just by harassing anything and everything, it cuts down on potential nest predators. So that's one of our flycatchers. Here's another one. It's a little bigger, called the great crested flycatcher. It's kind of neat. A little yellowish on its abdomen, a gray throat. When you hear the term crest, one of the things you need to remember is these crests can often be lowered and raised. So even like a blue jay is a nice visible crest. But if it's hesitant of the environment, if it thinks there might be a predator around, it can raise it up. But if it's comfortable with just hanging out with family, it can lower the crest. So the crests aren't always as evident. So unfortunately, this one that I've got good pictures of, it can raise the feathers at the top of its head for a crest, but it isn't. But it isn't at this point. So here's the great crested flycatcher. All right. Here's one you've certainly heard. The term Phoebe, if you've heard the sound just Phoebe, Phoebe, in spring, for many people, that's a sign of that spring has come. Here we're starting to get into the group that's a little more of a drab gray. So if you're looking for bright colors, just for the next couple of minutes, just please lower your bar of expectations. But eastern phoebes are very common. We hear them constantly. They do have a little yellowish on them, which helps you identify them over the ones which we'll see. And their heads look big because they often fluff up their feathers on their head just a little bit. So if you just look at them, they're just like, the head just seems disproportionately big because they make their heads a little fluffy. Okay. So they eat insects. That means that most of these are leaving us because it is getting harder to catch insects. Now, I would like to say this bird eats this and this bird eats this. That's hard though, because do blue jays mostly eat plant material? They do, but they can eat animals and they can be pretty aggressive predators of small vertebrates. That's not their usual type of diet, but they can. Like, can great blue herons go after like baby swans, et cetera? They don't usually, but they can. Can bald eagles go after adult great blue herons? Not often, but they can. So with bird diets, it's hard to say, like this bird eats this. A lot of these songbirds in general, this whole group for the next 3 weeks, are to some degree omnivorous, where they might prefer something, but in autumn, when insects come harder to find, they'll switch. So like robins, what do robins eat? Oh, they're eating worms. Yeah, but they could stay here all winter, and obviously they're not eating worms, so they'll eat berries over winter. Or a lot of these like flycatchers, they're flycatchers. They love eating flies. But then around this time of the year, you can see them with berries. Once again, just, there is some versatility in their diets, and especially when, the seasons change, they have to adapt or leave the area. So most do migrate out. but phoebes can stay here a little longer. They can switch to plant material a little easier. I'm sorry, I see something in the chat. It can. Good comment. Okay. No, sorry. So phoebes are common in our area, and if you see a flycatcher, a phoebe is a good first bet. Another thing, notice that they don't have white wing bars and they don't have a white ring around their eye. Now, one of the challenges that we have whenever we go out, like say birding, is what do people want to get out of birding? Obviously, very often there's diverse crowd members where people who are beginning birding or just very recreational birding. The birds you want to see are this, whereas some of the more advanced birds you want to see the rare kinds, etc. So just a quick nod to some of the other people who are a little more into birding. There are more flycatchers, but this is where it starts to get really hard to distinguish between them. They tend to be smaller. This one looks a lot like the phoebe that you just saw, a little smaller. And notice it has these white wing bars. This is a pewee, all right? So I'm going to leave it in a second. But this would be one of the reasons that birders, get to know birds by sound so much, because very often you don't get to see every bird. But a lot of the birds, especially this next group, so I didn't make this up. A lot of people just refer to it as a complex of species, because even if you're good, which one is that? I don't know. Just it's in the group. It's in the group of 5 related flycatchers. So sometimes you can't tell a bird by looking. You can get close, like I think it's one of these, etc. So then you start to use other cues. So that's where like the sound is really good. And you can say, it was definitely this sound. Or if you have your phone out, the Merlin app can say it was definitely that sound. So that helps. But then outside breeding season, they're not always making sound. Sometimes habitat can help. So like if you're in a wetland or certain types of trees with these, that can kind of help. But just this can be frustrating. And even, good birders, especially if the light's not right or something not close. All right, how much of a ring do you see around the eye? Do you see wing bars, etc.? Obviously, from a little bit of a distance, it's challenging. So these are our flycatchers. I missed the South American flycatchers. I lived there for a while because, they had brighter colors. Some had long feather tails. But we do have a bunch. We have the kingbird, the great crested flycatchers, the phoebes, and then a bunch of these. And that's the end of that one suborder, the Tyranny. So when you take the songbirds, you split them into, there's a couple in New Zealand, there are the flycatchers and their friends in South America, and then there's all of these other songbirds here. So blue jays are in the same group as crows. All right, so they are together in the family Corvidae, and collectively we can call them corvids. All right, so yes.
I think there's two of these blue jays in my area. I got one with the feathers.
Oh, great. We'll be talking about feathers in just a minute. Great. Oh, they're beautiful feathers. So on blue jays, I think one of the reasons that we relate to them so easily is, unlike most of these songbirds, the males and females look the same, and the immatures look the same. Like by the end of the summer, this is what the young look like. Whereas if you're with the warblers, a lot of you are like, oh, all right, this is what the male looks like, and this is what the female looks like. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. This is what the male looks like in spring, and the female looks like in spring. Now that it's autumn, here's what the male and the female looks like. Oh, but wait, then there's juveniles that just hatched this year. They don't quite look like that. I have to learn 6 different forms for this one species, as opposed to blue jay. That's what blue jays look like. So I think that's one of the things that that we like about them. There was someone. So the question, are blue jays and cardinals related? They are songbirds. All right, so all of them are in the same order, but within that order, no, they're not closely related. The cardinals with their thick beaks, we'll get to them next week, they're going to be better at eating seeds, like the sparrows and the grosbeaks, etc. One of the interesting things I think about blue jays is, if you notice this black like little hood they have, that varies a lot. And it varies to the point where this is what individual blue jays can use to distinguish between, like, who's my partner, who's, another blue jay coming in. So, while a lot of them do look the same to us, there are parts of them that vary to the point where they can tell each other apart. You had a question? Yeah, did I see your hand raised? Or
Okay.
okay.
Are songbirds somewhat aware of the human behavior? Like, you trying to get a photo of them, or trying to get close, or just trying to see them?
I think they definitely are. And actually, if you don't mind, how about I just hold off a second, because their cousins are the crows, which are so smart that they can, kind of perform kind of sometimes in the same realm as monkeys on some cognitive tasks. So if we're asking how smart are birds, if you don't mind, they have cousins who are worth a shout out. So we'll give them uh, a mention in just a second. Okay. So here are these various blue jays. Now, they are omnivorous, so they can eat a lot of plant material, which is about 75% of their diet, and animals. So we can see them all winter. Unlike a lot of the birds, if you're going to primarily rely on insects, you had to go. I've mentioned this before, but worth kind of mentioning again. I I mean, those feathers are just brilliant. You had mentioned, blue jay feathers. But in one sense, they're not technically blue in the way that we often think of it, in that there are two different ways that a feather can have color. One is to have a pigmented molecule inside. So if you have a red shirt, there's a red pigment. Someone dyed the shirt with a red molecule to make it look red. We have blue shirts, which a blue dye has been added. A lot of bird feathers are like that. So if you took a red feather and ground it up, the powder is red. If you took a yellow feather and ground it up, the powder is yellow. Same with black or brown or gray. If you take a blue feather and grind it up, it looks brown or gray. So there is no blue pigment in any blue bird's feathers. Birds just don't make blue pigments. And the same would apply to green, like of parrots and hummingbirds, and also shiny iridescent colors. That's not a pigment the way we think of pigments. What it is the way that the microscopic structure of the feather reflects light so that wavelengths interfere with each other. And perhaps the best thing, if you ever look at like an oil slick, it'll have all of these iridescent colors, but oil doesn't, like, oil is black. Oil, or, and if you look a soap bubble from your dish detergent, those colors aren't in your bottle of dish detergent. But when you have this thin bubble that has two layers, and light ray number one bounces off the top layer and light ray number two bounces off the bottom layer, then as they interfere with each other in a way that now that affects what colors we perceive, but the color wasn't there per se. So these are structural pigments, as the same would be true of bluebirds. Even blue-footed boobies in California and the Galapagos, that's not a blue pigment. So if you were to take the skin of their feet and like crush it, it would now look gray. Or if they change their diet, like that would, well, that's a separate topic, but then it would make it look gray as well. So blue jays are blue, but not for the reason, that I think we would think. Okay, quite vocal. And here they are, they're on the ground. What are they eating? Well, they have really strong bills. They can eat acorns. They can break those open. They can break open hickory nuts. So pretty strong. But then if they saw a small snake, if they saw a small rodent, a frog, they could go after that as well. They can prey on nests, birds' nests. So there are a lot of birds can do that, like woodpeckers can, great blue herons can. It's not how they get most of their energy, but nevertheless, if you're a bird, you have to be careful of many other birds which are able to go after your nest. Yes. That's a good question. So I'm going to go with two answers, and let me answer it and then make it a longer answer in a couple of weeks. So if you have so many songbirds, and I've raised this when we talked about ducks, just if you go to a bird walk, all right, let's say you meet someone interesting, all right? You start up a conversation, and then just as you leave, you say, you know what? I think maybe we'll get coffee. Maybe I'll give them my number. Have you ever said, wait a minute, stop? Is this person human? Has anyone ever done that? No? I have been on your bird walk. So that sounds silly because we're the only species of human left. There used to be others like Neanderthals and the like, but we're the only ones left. So if someone looks human, it's a pretty safe bet that they are. But in spring, you can have a dozen different species of duck on the same pond in breeding season. They're pairing up. There are lots of wrong choices, all right? Because a lot these aren't yours. You can't have kids with them, all right? That's not going to work out, all right? And so one of the big things for coloration is just who's in my group. Like blue jays are very social, so like okay, I see who's in my group. I see who's my potential partner is as well. So that's a big thing for coloration, just, identifying that because they're, once again, the majority of birds are songbirds. Something also, I don't know that this is as true in blue jays, but if you're going to go to all that work to make these pigments or these structural things, you will look duller if you're not as healthy. So in these, females especially more so than males, but males can do it too in some species. They can just kind of look at a bird and say, yeah, not healthy enough for me. They're look how well this one's eating, especially the ones which are red and yellow, because the red and yellow pigments are actually coming from what they eat. And we'll see more of the reds and yellows next week. So probably a whole bunch of reasons. Something was in the chat. So in that sense, we're endangered, but just given the fact that there are 8 billion of us, I think we're okay for now. As far as I don't think, yes. Oh, okay, okay. So there are certain birds which are just really good examples of being omnivores, and that's a perfect example. Yes, blue jays are. That's a great example for them. But blue jays have cousins, and there we go. So crows are in the same family as blue jays. So if we were to list the blue jays, the corvids in our area, it would be American crows, fish crows, ravens, and blue jays. So blue jays are unusual, in being more brightly colored than most. So as I'll see, there's actually 3 black birds that look like crows. So if it looks like crows, it's probably the American crow, but you can't be entirely sure. The American crow is best known for forming very large groups. We don't get them as much anymore, but I remember, this area, especially, they'd land on the lawn. Here, we would just get thousands. Still? Okay. Okay. Found different areas. I remember just, the sounds. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things to your point on dog food, certain birds, if they're omnivores, they can adapt pretty well to garbage. And so the spread of humanity has been a boon for like crows and ravens. They've done well by us. And so in winter, if there's, a landfill or a waste dump, you can see very large collections of crows because they do well. Here on an agricultural field, here, so there's waste grain, et cetera. A lot of crows there. So being omnivorous can certainly help you there. Okay. Now, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was making its call, so it was like getting good lungs full of air to get them.
Oh, are you going to talk about the material how the way that actually makes
A little. Let me just kind of go through the 3 cousins here, and then I'd be happy to. So here's a crow, all right? But it's not an American crow; it's a fish crow, and they look really similar. You'd have to get I'm sorry. So where'd you go? There's one. Okay. So that's not an American crow, but that's really kind of hard to see. If you wanted to really look, you could say, all right, it's a little smaller. The bill is a little thinner. It's going to sit with its head a little more hunched. If the light is right, you might see a little bit more of a purplish hue. So that's difficult. Or, and people at home, I was trying this earlier. I'll do this maximum volume. I'm not sure if you can uh, hear this. I'm sorry. Or you could say, oh, wait, I know American crows. Like, so here, the American crow sounds like this.
No.
But then if you see an American crow and it sounds like this, and the way I like to write it is it's saying nya 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 instead of call. And if it is, oh, there's a crow and you're hearing nya oh, that's a fish crow. All right. So once again, bird calls, I certainly struggle with them because you just get really good at learning them and then the birds fly away for the winter. They come back in spring and you forgot them all. And I'm certainly with you there. But it certainly does make it different. Easy because that's easy. You're just like, yeah, that's really distinctive. That's a fish crow, as opposed to, I don't know, is its neck hunched? Is its bill a little more slender? It just, that's a little more work. There is one more member of the group. I don't see as many of them, but they do live with us. I was looking at a ridge at some migrating hawks. There's a great place near a little past High Point State Park called Stokes Forest with a mountain, Sunrise Mountain. So you can pull right up and it's like a 20-foot walk, probably a little longer, but like there's like a cliff right there. You can sit and watch the migrating birds, but there were ravens flying over here. So this is a raven. How would you know? All right. Well, it's a little bigger. All right. Bill is a little thicker, got a little curve. Often fluffs up the feathers at its neck. It's often referred to as a goiter, almost looking so it has a goiter. Another thing you would say, like, ooh, look at that, a wedge tail instead of a flat tail, a wedge tail. And that's about it. So like, if you stare really hard, a little bit bigger, etc. But obviously from a distance, these are hard. And so, this is why, learning them by sound can have some advantages. A couple comments on ravens. There are a couple of kinds of ravens in the world. But if you were here for the hawk and eagle talk, I said those aren't good words, hawk and eagle. Because eagle just kind of makes you believe that they're related. Oh, let's put all the eagles in a group and all the hawks in the group. But then you realize, oh, wait, this hawk is a cousin of this eagle, and this hawk is a cousin of this eagle. And those two eagles aren't really like bald and golden eagles are not close kin. Same thing with salmon and trout. All right. So this trout is more closely related to this salmon, and this trout is more closely related. Like salmon aren't a group and trout aren't a group. There's different members of the group that we call salmon and we call trout. So same with crows and ravens. So in the family Corvidae, a couple of the big ones have, throughout the world are called raven. But this one's more closely related to this crow and this one's more closely related to that crow. They've done well by humans, once again, spreading, being omnivorous as they have been, so they can feed on grain, they can feed on carrion, very famous for, being on battlefields in the old days and feeding on the deceased. So, they have quite a broad diet. They are really smart. All right, they are among the smarter of the birds. I've heard on some tests, you look how primates often do, they're in there. I'm sorry, here's one example, and I just love it because it's good science, and it was just, you could have done it, yesterday. So what it was there was a bunch of bird watchers, and they were going to go for a hike in the woods. And they were going into the woods, and there were some crows there, and the crows got like all upset that like they were going in, and they call until they came out. And they said, "Do the crows know that all of us came out?" So then they decided, all right, let's all of us go in, but all but one of us come out, and we'll see how high crows can count. And my recollection of the paper was 7. All right, so that crows could count, like they would know that there was still one person left in there, and they would still sound the alarms until, if you dealt with more than 7, then they could no longer count that high. But so that was a neat experiment. Any of us could have done that if we had thought of it. They can use tools. So if they're trying to get insects, they can get like a leaf or something and use that for probing. So tool use, that's a little fancier. A couple birds do that, like green herons do that. Green herons can pick things up and throw it in the water, and then as like lures for fish, and a little fish will come up and say, "Ooh, what's that?" And then they'll go catch the fish. So we go fishing with like, bait, and green herons can do that too. Corvidae has a number of members um, in our group. Right. Next group, the thrushes. Yes, sure.
There's the regular common crow, I guess it's called the American crow. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Can that land on wires and hold on wires? Or I heard that the bird friend of mine said that only the fish crows will grab onto those wires,
Ooh,
but the regular American crows will not.
that's interesting. I don't know.
This guy's
I-
a rabid birder.
You know what? I know. Forgive me. I'm going to say something that might reinforce what you just said. I'm sorry. I meant to say it, but I forgot. So we're talking about the songbirds. Now, for weeks, we've been talking about different groups of birds, and a lot of the birds have been big. I mean, hawks can get big, and herons can get big, and like woodpeckers can get big, but songbirds don't. All right, songbirds aren't big. And what you just saw are as big as they come. So in this order of 6,000 birds, ravens are as big as you get. There are no songbirds which are bigger than ravens. And so your point then, would it be hard for a crow or a raven to be on a wire? They are the biggest songbirds. So that's kind of consistent with what you said. Sure. If someone said that, it could be based on something, but just their size, that would make sense.
This guy hung around with lots of birders, so
Mhm.
he got from one of his friends.
Yeah.
All I know.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and that's one of the things you can't, like, the light's not always good. It's hiding in the bushes. But if like how it behaves can help you, like it just all of these little cues, so things like that, they're really valuable. Yes, you do. Mhm. Wow. So leader's interesting. The term I often hear is sentinel. So that if they're going to feed, like they've decided you're the one who's standing guard and will make a sound. But once again, your question on intelligence, whether there's a leader who's communicating, they do have a diversity of calls, that means something to the crows, like this means this and this means this. So one of them's watching it. Yeah, so that group,
That's what they played over the speakers here at
oh, did they?
distress calls.
Yeah,
They played them for about 2 years.
I remember.
And they moved, now they're.
So you need to get a louder speaker to get them back. Yeah. Yes.
How are the rules for interacting with crows work? Like, how much should you keep them before they get agitated or attacked? How do you interact with them?
So as far as rules go, I don't know that there are rules. You can, certainly speak to, Fish and Wildlife Management. In general, I think we try to discourage that because crows can get to be big birds. If you get a crow accustomed to it, it sees people and says, "Oh, here's free food," then that works for you. But now, if it goes to a park, it might approach, someone has a child, and that as this big bird, comes at it, the bird is looking for food because it made it with you, but that might startle them. They might hit the bird, etc. So in general, I think we try not to do this. I know that you're not allowed to keep any wild animal in New York. So birds, birds in general would be so if that going that far. Yes.
To a robin, that's nice.
Ravens tend to swim.
Hmm.
Crows tend.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. And that would make sense. Ravens being bigger, they would be able to catch the thermals a little bit better. Next group are the thrushes. Now, when we hear thrushes, the first two I'd like to mention, you probably don't think, because a wood thrush is a thrush, a hermit thrush is a thrush, but a robin is a thrush and a bluebird is a thrush. So we have a number of thrushes which live in our area. Robins are colorful. I think we see so many, that we get used to their nice orange chest here. The orange would be an example of carotenoid pigment, so that's a real pigment. And you would be able to look, if you're a robin, at another bird and see how well fed it is. All right, because if you're not eating as well, your color isn't going to be quite as distinct. Also, like, even though they all look like robins, they can tell each other apart, and you could too. So if you look here at the eye, can you see the white where it's a couple of white arcs? All right. But now look at this one. Can you see how that's all white? All right. So even though it's a robin, there are some features which vary, and they can tell each other apart. Uh, one of the Oh, and in this video, just a week, yeah, I'm sorry, about a month ago, this robin was in a tree. And it looks sick, but it's just molting. All right, so birds try to get a new set of feathers at least once a year because feathers are important, and old feathers, they're just not, up to snuff anymore, and they're starting to break down. So you grow new ones, and birds can look a little shaggy in the meantime. And so, you can see birds like this and they're fine. They're just shedding their feathers. And a lot of times they'll try not to do it when they're either breeding or migrating. Because like laying eggs and caring for eggs, that takes energy. Flying to South America takes energy. And getting a new set of feathers takes energy. So a lot of birds will try to like finish one of them before like they start the next one, just so they're not trying to do two at once. I think a lot of us associate robins with, oh, they're going to be on a lawn eating worms. And so if you go hiking in winter, like in January, and you see a bird like that, you might be surprised that it's a robin. But they can stay here. They just have to change their diet. They're no longer eating invertebrates. They're now eating berries. All right. And so birds can change their behavior in winter. And so you say like, oh, I associate robins with acting like this. In January, they can still be around you, but they're just not on your lawn. They're in like thickets where it's protected from the wind, and they're eating berries there instead. Now, here's a tricky one, a question that I never know how to answer. If you were to ask, do birds migrate? It's not yes or no. We could spend a long time going over. So, for example, robins will stay in our area all year. Okay, do robins migrate? Yes, all of them. Well, how would I mean that? Because the robins which are here in winter are not the robins who are here in summer. Our robins went farther south. Canada's robins came here. So all of the robins are migrating, but there still are areas where you can find robins all year round. So it's tricky. So there are terms like partial migration, etc. If robins are in Georgia, if that's where they laid their eggs, they probably won't migrate. So, they could stay in their breeding grounds all summer. So it's a little trickier of an answer, but especially if it's a milder winter, we can see robins all year long. Bluebirds, just such beautiful birds. Once again, it's not a real pigment, it's a structural pigment. So it's reflecting light. So a lot of birds like bluebirds and indigo buntings, how brilliant is the blue? Well, a follow-up question is how sunny is the day? All right, so on a nice sunny day, you can just see brilliant, brilliant blue. But on another day, especially like in winter, almost looking gray. All right, where you see, oh yeah, I saw this little gray bird, little dull orangish chest, but it's like, oh wait, that was a bluebird, and so they can be with us all throughout the winter. So once again, we don't have to, a lot of them are going south, but in January, February, you can still find bluebirds. So here you can see, notice all the leaves are gone from the trees. They can remain with us. They are cavity nesters. So, they can't, just make a nest on any old branch. They need a space. And as humans introduce more birds in this area, like starlings and like some sparrows, this started competing with that. And so we saw bluebird populations dropping. But one of the things which has helped a great deal, obviously, is, we put up bluebird houses. There was a wonderful Girl Scout troop that made a bunch of bluebird houses and put them up at one of the Audubon sanctuaries. We've got a lot of wrens. I don't think we've gotten any bluebirds, but still, we're still hoping. But that certainly helped, and bluebird populations are rising once again from a drop that they had, but just a wonderful bird. We do have other thrushes here. So here is a hermit thrush. We have wood thrushes. This is a veery. So these other thrushes, they have more of a brown. And if you're trying to distinguish between them, you're looking at Veeries don't have bright spots on their chest. The hermit, I'm sorry, it's not as a virulent. Yeah, that's a next week group. So the hermit thrush and the wood thrush will have a darker brown on their chest. The hermit thrush a bit more of a reddish tail. So, if you're into birding, you can distinguish between those. But once again, another great way is to listen to the sounds. And I'm sorry if anyone's at home, I hope you can hear these. They're often compared to flutes. So here's a wood thrush. So not only was it flute-like, but there was a little bit of a trill as opposed to this one.
Creating of a cross shot.
So if you hear a flute-like sound, then I think you could say like, okay, that's one of the thrushes, a wood thrush or a hermit thrush. And if you really wanted to know, if you can't say, ooh, how dark are the spots or is there reddish on the tail, you listen for a trill. The first one. The veery is a little duller in its coloration. You probably hear them a lot. So once again, there are birds which visually are very striking. If you want to distinguish between species of the ones which aren't, sound often helps. And just because it's the next slide anyway, here's a robin's call.
Can't hear any of these at home.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I tried to do a second one. That'll be the last one here. You might say, I don't want to learn a robin. I want to learn like the exotic one, like this type of warbler. But you could make the argument, well, learn the robin first, because you're going to hear a lot of them. Learn the tufted titmouse first. You're going to hear a lot of them. And that way, when you're working or you're walking, it's like with the common ones, you're like, yeah, I know that one. I know that one. I know that one. And then, ooh, I don't know that one. So rather than try to learn the exotic one that you're going to hear rarely, and then just be surrounded by sounds you don't know. If you get the most common ones down, that might actually help you single out, oh, that's a rare one. I'm going to stop and listen to that. Yeah.
Robin has like 3 or 4 kinds of calls.
Yeah. The tufted titmouse as a whole, but yeah, that is true as well. Yes. Yes. Oh, okay. We're getting that. Yeah, we're getting to those.
30 different birds, but it wasn't because I know.
Yeah.
there was one that didn't move.
So for those of you at home, if you couldn't hear that, the comments have been how frustrating it can be when birds make more than one sound. And then we got into a mockingbird question, and we will be on the mockingbird in about like 3 minutes or so. Another member that's kind of in this group is a lark. Now, there's a larks throughout the world. There's only one in North America. And even though you could find it all throughout the year, your best chance is winter. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Winter's a good time to go birding. Not for a lot of birds, but there are some birds that you will probably only see in winter. Like we were out just this past weekend, now that the weather's changing. We were seeing the juncos, we were seeing the golden crowned kinglets, horned larks, tree sparrows. So there are certain sparrows that you only see in summer, another sparrow that you only see in winter, the snow geese, etc. So these have a yellow throat, some little black on a mask, and tufts of feathers in their eye region, hence the term horned. So the horned lark, they're big in grassland areas, but once again, it's a cold January day, and all of a sudden, here's a bird that you probably won't see, at any other time of the year other than winter. So larks are among our groups as well. Okay. We mentioned mockingbirds, and mockingbirds with climate change are moving farther and farther north. We can have them all winter now. We didn't have that to the same degree. So, be more on the lookout for mockingbirds. Here you see it eating fruit. It'll have a more varied diet throughout the year, but in winter, if that's all it can find, it can be omnivorous. Yes?
Kind of have The hundred color pattern is very similar to that.
Mhm. So we're in the songbirds, and I am trying to do the family tree in order, but we split them into families, and the crows are in the blue jay family, and this is in the same family with the catbird and the brown thrasher. So they're not distantly related, so they're not closely related, but they're not distantly related. So mockingbirds, as has been pointed out here, are well known for the variety of calls that they can make. Their cousins, the catbirds, can make a variety. The brown thrasher, which is a cousin of those, can actually probably do a little more. So just between them, they're very good at imitating lots of different birds, and pretty good size. You know, they're when you see a bird, if you're trying to identify it, you know, a good thing to start off with is related to something I know. Is it blue jay size? Is it sparrow sized? Is it crow sized? Or is it like a sparrow but a little smaller? That will help you. Here you see mockingbirds mobbing a crow, trying to get it to leave the area. So crows can do that to, you know, birds like hawks, and here the mockingbirds doing it to the crow, which is probably good because crows are omnivorous. They'll eat baby bird eggs and nestlings if they can. And I know that at home, the sound isn't projecting as well here, but in this one, it just goes from sound to sound to sound to sound. So a lot of birds will have just one specific sound they make. These are not like that. Closely related to the mockingbird is the catbird, gray with you know, darker on the head, etc., but also bright reddish brown. And if you say, what? Well, most people never see this, but you have to look under the tail of a catbird. There is a like a reddish brown spot there. All right, which I'll pull up in and
Why are they called the catbird? What's the
there it does. So just okay, so I'll have that in a second. But if you notice, a lot of us just associate the catbird with a brown, a grayish color. But here you can see there actually are these, you know, bright reddish colors under its tail if you get a glimpse of that. So pretty common bird there. And then there is one more in the group called a thrasher. All right, so it's, you know, looking about the same size, about the same build, but having a very varied song. So if you could just, you know, this one was just sitting there, and all of these videos are on my YouTube channel at Dr. Jan 41 if you ever care. I mean, you can listen. This thing just keeps on singing, but no 5 seconds sound like the 5 seconds before that. It just keeps on going and just keeps varying its song. Now, speaking of song, I'd like to just kind of explain why. What makes this group of birds who they are? Well, birds can perch with their toes. Now, birds' toes have changed. So, like parrots have modified their toes, woodpeckers have modified their toes. This woodpecker has a different toe than another woodpecker, etc. But in general, this group has more of a perching foot. So we could call them the perching birds because of modifications where 3 toes forward and the 1 toe then just faces the first 3. All right. So we could call them the perching birds. But we could also call them the songbirds because if you look down their long throats, and birds have long necks. All right. So if you look at the neck of a bird, this is a dove, that's a long windpipe or trachea. At the base of the windpipe here is a muscular area called the syrinx, and that's where the songbirds make their songs. Other birds don't have that. I don't mean to be insulting, but if you've ever heard great blue herons call, yeah, it's just like this cackle almost, like it's harsh and it's grating. Bald eagles, no one likes their call. And the way I know that is because if you're watching a movie and you hear an eagle sound, it's not an eagle, it's a red-tailed hawk. Nobody likes how eagles sound, and they always dub in red-tailed hawk calls for bald eagles. They do. So all these westerns where, you know, an eagle flies overhead, that's not what eagles sound like. So one of the things that this group did was they modified this part of their respiratory anatomy, the syrinx, and this allows them to make all of these songs. I have, by my count, just a couple more birds on this list I'm just going to go through. Nuthatches are fun. They'll stay with us all winter, so they'll continue to come to your feeders. And while lots of birds can go up a tree, they can go down, which is a lot harder. So that's unusual. So one of the examples like you'd mentioned of the behavior, like if you look, here's a bird going down a tree. Oh, that's a nuthatch. Not many birds can do that. This one's unusual. It's the red-breasted nuthatch. Notice it's got a stripe here. And it's unusual because they really like conifer forests. So birds specialize, all right? So even if it likes the forest, some are more in like the oak hickory forest, some more are in pine forest. So that's an unusual bird to see. And here are the red-breasted. We are much more like, so anyway, I'm sorry, got some still pictures of it. So here you can see really pretty. At one point it's eating a spider. So it's just, they live their lives going down tree trunks and among the leaves and needles, et cetera, looking for, any insects and arthropods to eat. Somewhere I got. There it is. I'm sorry if you can't see it. It's got like a spider there in addition to the red-breasted nuthatch, there's a white-breasted nuthatch. This is the one that's more common in the oak hickory trees in our area. But once again, you can see it going down the tree, and it's just looking for bugs. And tree bark, there's different kinds of tree bark. Some is smooth, but a lot has all of these crevices, and that's just great for bugs. All right, and so there are a lot of birds that just make their living. I'm going to keep on looking for bugs, just by looking at all the crevices here. Another one that may stand with us all winter is the black-capped chickadee. They can occur in big groups and they can flock with other birds. So especially this time during migration, you might see like, oh, here's a warbler. Oh, there's a tufted titmouse. Oh, there's a black-capped chickadee. And in general, the more eyes, the more you can spot predators. And a lot of the food around this year is not like a spider. So like if you're looking for a spider, don't hang out in a group because, there's not enough to share. But if there's a bush that has berries, odds are like once one of you sees it, then everyone goes there. Everyone eats of that, berry bush, and then you fly to the next one. So there's, advantages at this time of year of hanging out with friends. A member of this group doing the same thing is called a brown creeper. And if you notice, it has a curve to its bill. You might not notice them because they are camouflaged pretty well. And if they hear you coming by, they'll just freeze. They won't fly away necessarily. They'll just hug the bark. And as you can imagine, it'd be kind of hard to spot them with their coloration. So kind of like the nuthatches, with this one's climbing up the trees. It's just looking on the bark to see if there's any bugs or spiders, etc. Okay, two more birds. This one is smaller than a sparrow. So once again, if you were trying to identify it, smaller than a sparrow, there aren't that many that are. And then so that would really help you. This one's called a blue-gray gnatcatcher. All right. Now, really tiny birds, which never stay still and are always in the branches. If you're a photographer, you hate them. All right, because you come home with so many pictures where the branch in front of them is in focus or the branch behind them is in focus, but they're not. So, photographers, I don't have to say any more to you. You know this. But here's a blue-gray gnatcatcher. And one of the things you might notice is they can, when they spread their tail feathers, there's black in the middle and white on the sides. The last bird, as we just kind of, or for the evening, is the tufted titmouse. So there are some birds in our area that have crests. Cardinals have crests, the crested flycatcher has crest, the blue jay does, and the tufted titmouse does. All right, and so if you saw that, that would be a distinguishing feature. It's smaller than those other tufted birds, so that could help you identify it. Gray or a bluish gray. The tuft can be raised or depressed. So you might see that it sticks up in some of these images more than others. And tufted titmice, once again, are good calls to learn because you hear them constantly. But your point before that they don't always make the same sound would be true of this group as well. So that would be a good one to start with, so that you hear them so often. You could say, oh, I know that one, I know that one. But you say, all right, I've learned the tufted titmouse with the Peter, Peter, Peter sound or whatever. And then you'll go and you'll hear a bird's like, wait, that one sounds a little familiar, but that's different. And you're like, oh, that's another variant song of the tufted titmouse. Okay. So this group, the order of Passeriformes, has the vast majority of birds, 60%. And they are the most common birds in our area, just when we do with the colors and the songs, the most wondrous. And so I've decided to break them into 3 groups. This is a great place to pause at the end of group 1. The group 2, I'd like to include the cardinals, the orioles, the blackbirds, the tanagers, the sparrows, and then leave the warblers, which is a favorite of bird watchers, for the 3rd week. And then after that, we'll get into topics like, birds and food chains, environmental issues facing birds, etc. If anyone has any questions, feel free to stay. Thank you so very much for coming. I hope you have a wonderful night. And the weather is so beautiful, and it's going to be unseasonably warm. I hope you can get out and do some bird watching. It really is a great time of year. We can still see a couple of things, even some of the warblers. It was like last week, I was still seeing yellow-rumped warblers. So, who knows? You can still see. Yes?
We've gone to the school of thought at least that birds are not through the dinosaurs.
So, because I'm older, I teach a course, Prehistoric Life, and I've been teaching it for, let's say, 25 years. When I started teaching Prehistoric Life, yeah, here's this idea. Yeah, this could happen. Birds and dinosaurs, they could be kin. Since then, the evidence has just been overwhelming. And actually, so let me finish. So in science, we doubt and question everything. I'm not 100% sure of anything that I think I know. And if new studies come to light, I'll say, oh, well, I have to reconsider. That's just what scientific thinkers have to do. That being said, the overwhelming consensus is, yeah, it certainly seems to be that way. And that is a great topic. The second, when I finish this recording, I posted on my YouTube channel, among other places, and there's all of the series. So if you've missed any of these, there's a Birds of Orange County lecture series. Once again, my YouTube channel is Dr. Jan 41, DRJAHN 41. There were 40 other Dr. Jans. Who knew? So anyway, but the very first one, I'm sorry, the second one was the anatomy of birds and their evolutions. So for an hour, that was kind of the topic. So you're welcome. Yes. Blackbird. Ooh, okay. So I did show some South American flycatchers. Oh, so I'm sorry. There was the kingbird. Let me go back to the right. Okay. Okay. So maybe like this one? Oh, no. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Oh. All right. So I'm not going to answer this one. Oh yeah, that's a South American flycatcher. I don't think you've seen it here. That would be news. That would be noteworthy. Okay. Now this was not the topic of the conversation, but I'm going to go here anyway. Darn it, where is it? One of these is the Kiskadee flycatcher. Now, I'm sure you're going to think that I'm exaggerating, and that's fine. You can think I'm exaggerating. But in Paraguay, where I lived for 2 years, this is one of the most common birds, if not the most common bird. So you're just constantly surrounded by Kiskadee, Kiskadee, Kiskadee. So it is the common thought, this one in the middle, this one here. The common thought is this bird makes that call when it is around a woman who is pregnant. And so women in the town, which include, sisters-in-law of mine and nieces, they say, they're like, shoo, get out of my house, get out of my house. So it is just everyone will say that. That's why they're calling, because they're sensing that a woman is pregnant nearby. I just figured I'd share. Thank you so very much for coming. Have a wonderful night. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the quick check on Route 211 all the way out beyond the Galleria? Like if you go out 211
I
beyond
think
the
so.
Galleria.
Here,
there's a
forgive me
quick
just
check
one
out-
second. I have to get
Yeah.
a count. 3, 6. Thank you. You're good.
In the parking lot there is a, beyond, between the parking lot and the next little strip mall,
Mhm.
is a gully. And
Mhm.
it's very overgrown. It's got a couple of big trees and lots of stuff there. This year there were 2 green herons in there, big
Mhm.
green herons. But there's also a colony of cicada killing wasps there.
Ooh, I like those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been seeing more and more of those.
Yeah, I'd never seen them before and I figured out what they were.
Yeah. No, I'm seeing them this year. I saw a lot of them last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big cicada years,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Question for you. Is there a mange problem in foxes around here, red foxes?
I don't know.
Because I saw one, a very mangy fox, last year and another one this year. It could have been the same one. It might be in that same territory, same territory.
We saw
about
one the day
5
before
miles
yesterday,
away.
it looked very healthy, so.
Yeah, but the one I saw a couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago had no hair at all.
Hmm.
I mean, it was really weird.
Hmm.
So, I don't know.
I don't know.
No. Something's going on.
Something's going on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Are there many green herons around here?
Yes, there are.
And they stay.
They usually don't. No.
I saw just last week, I saw some.
Oh, that's great. That's great. They can stay.
Oddest place, I was walking by the Monhegan Middle School or
Mhm.
the grade school.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's
The
Marshy in there.
marsh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, I know.
saw 2 of them.
Oh, that's great. That's great. They, like when the light hits them right, they can be quite colorful.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
how
I didn't
that-
know what it was at first.
Yeah.
Because I never thought heron, because I'm thinking the great gray heron or
Yeah.
something, and
I have pictures here. Every now and then you can see them raise, they can actually have the feathers on top of their head stand up. I've got some pictures. It's kind of neat.
that's. Thank you.
Hi, Dorothy. How are you? Here, let me,
Hi, I'm okay. Yeah, there we go.